live.
What's going on, everybody? We are back. We have episode number 61 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Cannonier versus Kelvin Gastelum. It's UFC Vegas 34. It's a fun card. I actually kind of like the card. I like it for betting. I like it for entertainment purposes. It's probably better than the pay-per-view we had a couple weeks ago, for being honest here. As usual, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag for a 50% bonus up to your first $1,000 deposit. Use the promo code CLUBSUB. And guys, if you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us out quite a bit. We're up to 521 now. Let's push that 1,000 by the end of the year. Come on, baby. And so tonight you got me, John at MMA Fox, Luke at SW_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. We will see whether or not C makes an appearance or not. TBD. I think he may, because he does have some strong opinions on this card. But if not, we got you covered. We have a lot of bets on this card. I'm excited to dive into it. So without further ado, we're going to get into the first fight of the night. Luke, I am going to start with you here. We got Lags. I'm going to start with you. Sorry. We got Ramiz Brahimaj taking on Sasha Palatnikov. What do you got?
So yeah, I do have a bet on here on the first fight. So I have one unit on the under 2.5 rounds at -125. I kind of think that, I was left on an island basically the last fight. I had Ramiz, round one sub at like crazy odds. I think it was plus 1,100 and, doesn't shoot a single takedown the entire fight. Kind of baffling considering, 8-2 going into that fight. All 8 of his wins, pretty much first round subs, barring the one second round sub. So, I kind of think this is Ramiz early or Sasha late, as, Ramiz fights tend to be because his cardio, tapers off dramatically after that first round. So, I don't really get why it seems like Ramiz is kind of everybody's darling this week, but I don't know how you're laying juice on him considering, he hasn't really proven a 15-minute, solid performance. So I think if you're playing him, you should be playing the sub props or the round one props, but I like the under 2.5 here.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, no bet for me. I'm actually just giving a bit more credence to Palatnikov in the matchup in general than most people, for kind of some of the reasons that Lags brought up. Pretty much every fight that's went over the 7.5-minute mark, Brahimaj lost, and he's shown to slow down in those fights as well. I would still say he's like an effective gasser in the sense that, he's still going to like usually attempt takedowns, still throw strikes, but he's clearly more labored. He gets more hittable. And we obviously saw with Palatnikov, survive the onslaught against Kosi, take over the fight, and win that way. We've also seen go a hard 25 minutes on the regional scene before. So I think he's just more proven in an extended fight. But obviously, Ramiz is really live for a sub. But actually, I think an interesting value prop is Palatnikov by points at plus 375. I don't know. I guess I'm less bullish on the sub. Not necessarily the sub, but just an overall finish in general. Not to say that I think it's like unlikely or anything like that. I could definitely see it for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think especially even just what you touched on, Legs, too, with him not shooting a takedown in his last fight when he's done that pretty much in every single fight. I think that kind of brings into some fight IQ question marks too, coupled with, people laying juice on him. I don't hate Rami's plays. I think you should just be playing him inside the distance if you're going to do so. But I'm actually going to say Palatnikov survives and wins a decision here as a contrarian take.
I guess it'll be interesting to see, real quick, to see what FanDuel puts out his round 3 decision prop, if you like that too.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad call.
I didn't bet it, but I kind of agree with Lags' take here. I might bet it. I don't know. But I do think the under is the way to go with this. Like, I guess the way that it could not hit an under is Ramiz does exactly what he did in his last fight and decides to kickbox for 15 minutes, which I guess is possible. But, I mean, unless he wants to be out of the UFC in 2 or 3 fights, I don't think that's going to happen. Like, that was very, very bizarre. And, like, I had Griffin in that fight, but it was just very, very bizarre given, the wealth of data that we had on how he fights. And I kind of still come down on that. And even if he does do that, Sasha has 0 defense on the feet, and he will just bite the mouthpiece and throw at you. So I kind of think he's going to probably force a finish out either way. To be honest, my only real hesitancy with the under is where the line is. I think it's kind of weird. It's at -125. Like I expected that to get absolutely steamed, and it's still sitting there. So I'm probably going to play it. Like, I mean, I think what 70% of Ramiz's win condition is a finish, probably. And if Sasha,
Probably mostly round one
Sasha,
too.
I mean, how many times has Sasha even been to decision in his career? Right? I mean, not much. He's been twice when twice when he was originally. So I don't know. I don't see it. See, do you have an opinion here?
Yeah, I played the under early on. I think I got better line than -125. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of those fights where Ramiz is either going to hit like his win condition, which probably is sub-1, or, you know, I guess it gets a little bit dicey if he doesn't hit it, just because I think he's tough in general. I don't think he's going out lightly. Sasha, no decision only. I don't know what that is on DraftKings, but that's probably like a decent way to play him. I don't really think Ramiz is going out lightly, but I'm pretty confident that he's going to grapple early on.
I'm going to pull that up real quick, and we'll see what that is. But actually, never mind. Yeah.
I don't think there's like a whole lot of value on +125 Ramiz sub or whatever. Like,
actually, I was looking at that. That was only like on the reference line. It's actually like +180, and then his inside the distance is +160.
Is it +180? Because like when you guys were talking about that earlier in the week, I was kind of in my head
it is on DraftKings according to Best Fight Odds.
So decision only. Wow, Palatnikov's actually +100. So that's actually a great line for decision only. It's funny because like when you guys were talking about that earlier in the week, I actually think +125 is kind of close to where I priced Brahimaj for sub. Right? Like, if you assume he's like 55%, 60% favorite here. I think a gigantic portion of that with his win equity is tied to a sub, right? So, yeah, I didn't think that was that crazy. +180 is actually not that bad.
Yeah.
But moving on, we got Roosevelt Roberts taking on Ignacio Bahamondes. And so, like, I think the line right now is about where it should be. I picked up a little bit of Roberts at -115 last week. I do think it's kind of amusing how everybody and their mother was lining up to bet Bahamondes against John McDessie, and now they're all turning around and betting Roosevelt Roberts here. With that said, I mean, I do like Roberts. As you guys know, I wasn't really very high on Bahamondes going into the McDessie fight. Nothing has really changed in that regard. You know, I guess for me, I was impressed with the output and that he managed to get off that kind of output against McDessie. But the bottom line is all the flaws that we thought and we talked about on this podcast that were in Bahamondes' game going into that fight were on display in that fight. McDessie basically just touched him whenever he wanted to. You know, he just doesn't really have a functional professional level defense at this point. He might have an output. He does have an output advantage on the feet against Roberts, but I'm not sure how much he'll come into play when Roberts actually has size parity with him, which almost no one who fights him does. And Roberts is going to touch him up whenever he steps into the pocket. So I wouldn't be shocked if his output drops a little. And then beyond that, you know, Roberts attempts more than 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. Bahamondes is really bad on the mat, whereas Roberts, at least when he is the guy in top position, is actually pretty good and fairly dangerous. And so, I mean, look, I'm only going small because I don't trust Roberts, and I think he's pretty flaky. But I do think he has like a big favorite upside here. So I took him at -115. I think the line's pretty much right there. I don't know what the sub line is. If it's better than +400, I think it might be.
I want to say it was +400. I think it was +385.
It's not horrible. It's not great. I think I'd rather play ITD, to be honest. Luke, what are your take here?
Yeah, I kind of think the line is roughly accurate. I definitely don't hate a play where you got in on it, John. I don't know. Maybe I'm still just jaded from the Jim Miller bet and me laying a significant amount of chalk on him. But I don't know. I've just kind of been vocal about that. I think that at this point, the guy's kind of a dummy. But thing is that if he doesn't come out here and shoot a ton of takedowns, I really wouldn't feel great about having a Roberts ticket just based on the output considerations. But to your point, I do think he's, probably faster, more technical. But I still just in general see the striking probably being close optically. So yeah, it's more so, are we going to see, D1 Roberts here or not? If we do, I think it probably looks like a great bet, and he might even be live for a sub 2. But Yeah, I kind of just want to see a bit more from Roberts before I'm jumping back into it.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much. I kind of similar to Luke here. I think the line's more so about right. And I think that, again, if we see Dewan Roberts come out here, I think he more so covers that line. And this line looks a little bit short, to be honest. I think on the feet, it's probably like 55, 60. Roberts, like I favor him a little bit just because I think the power, is going to limit the volume a little bit from Bahamondes. But, I think this is a solid fight for Roberts, to get a bounce back and utilize that wrestling.
See, anything here?
Yeah, I picked up some early Roberts. I think like 62.5% Roberts is probably fine. He's got the grappling path. I think, Ignacio with the size parity, it's kind of going to be interesting to see how it plays out on the feet. Obviously favor Roberts in the pocket. Plus, I don't think Ignacio's got a whole bunch of pop on his punches. I don't know. Yeah, I just think Roberts has like a clean grappling path where either round is over or it just might be a fight-ending sequence, the first takedown. Ignacio is not really anything off his back. So, yeah.
See, I'm sticking with you here. William Knight, Fabio Chiran. What are your thoughts?
I picked up like early Fabio action, mostly because I'm willing to fade like Knight. Anybody plus 200 kind of versus him. It's just more or less like my thought process. And I picked up like over 1.5 pretty early at like minus 110. Just like another line that I knew that I could arb out of if I wanted to later on. But Knight and Fabio probably could just stare at each other for a little while. I recognize Knight could just, wrestle him, get some top time, just grind it out. But yeah, I'm willing to just kind of fade somebody like Knight at plus 200 pretty much always. Don't really think like Knight's ever EV play, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bet the fight, but I have like somewhat similar thoughts. I don't know. In my head, I just kind of think Knight WrestleFuck is remarkably live here, but I also just don't really rate Fabio. I thought his fight against Kammer regionally was pretty pathetic. And look, he beat Myron Dennis over 5, but, Myron Dennis isn't really anything special. But William Knight isn't anything special. Kind of to C's point, I've been looking to fade him pretty much since he got into the UFC. I pushed out against Jung. I'm probably going to push out here as well, to be honest. I think what I want against Knight is a guy who's decent in the clinch and just throws decent volume. That's all I really want. I'm just not really sure Schrant is decent in the clinch, but I kind of just think whoever wins is going to look like the side massively. Like a Knight win is probably predicated on him just dominating Schrant in the grappling and in the clinch, and a Schrant win is predicated on him staying in space and just piecing him up because Knight has no striking defense whatsoever. The most interesting part about this Knight fight, as is any Knight fight, is Knight's Tapology picture. If you guys want to go check that out, he looks like he's getting ready to do a Magic Mike show. But yeah, I have no real strong thoughts here. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I have bet against William Knight in his last 2 fights. I bet Kammer against him. I still think that was a very winnable fight for Kammer if he just fought at range and just kind of picked him apart. But instead, the dummy decided to go to the clinch. Then he got foot sweeped and then, stuck on bottom and lost that way. I did bet Jung against him. I don't know. My thing is, even with his record being 9-2, like in pretty much any fight I've ever watched of his and going back a pretty decent ways, guys just really never looked good or had like a complete performance, even in any of his wins. But the issue kind of I have with Charant and why I guess I'm not willing to lay it against him is because as much as William Knight doesn't do anything, Charant doesn't really do anything. He tends to kind of just play the back foot. He'll just throw one left hand. That's usually it. He can get stuck against the cage for extensive periods of time, which I think is also Knight's best part of his game from the body lock. So, I think Knight could look great. Charant could look great, or we could kind of see like option number 3 where both guys just stare at each other. And to be honest, I'm kind of more so actually leaning that way, that we just don't see much happen really at all, at least earlier on in the fight. But I think Knight probably finds his way to the ground at some point. Maybe gets a TKO, but I think he might just be able to like grind out a decision win actually.
Lags, how about you?
This fight was kind of interesting. Not only like do these guys not do a lot in their fights, I don't think these guys do a lot well in general. Either of these guys. Obviously, like we touched on with Knight. I mean, we're not a huge fan of William Knight in general. He just doesn't do anything great. Decent in the clinch, but he also loses in the clinch. So, and then on the other side, with Fabio, he's got a decent left hand and he has decent submission game, front strokes and whatnot, but his takedown defense isn't great. Like you guys touched on, I think that a wrestle fucking clinic here, could definitely happen. But I just kind of think, again, to Luke's point, I think this is going to be a staring contest. I have 1.5 units on the over 1.5 minus 140. It's still sitting minus 150, and I really don't hate it because I kind of think that outside of like Knight getting him down, pounding him out early, I don't think we really see an early finish.
Yeah, agreed. So we move on. I actually think it's going to be a fun little fight in women's. Is it bantamweight or flyweight?
Is your girl?
Is taking place.
Is your girl?
Yeah, it's bantamweight.
Defend
Malecki.
her honor.
Yeah. Well, I picked up Bam Malecki against Josiane Nunes. Again, I think right now where the line is, Malecki minus 160.65 is more or less right. But I picked up Malecki around minus 115. I guess I just don't really see it with Nunes. Like I have some worries about Malecki only having 2 fights and, her just general lack of defense. But what Malecki does, having great durability, great cardio, great output and size, is pretty much exactly what wins fights in low-level WMMA. It's basically a cheat code there. And like, I get it. She has no defense, but she pressures relentlessly and basically does nothing but throw. And like on the other side, you have Josiane Nunes, who, she KO'd a bunch of people regionally. But if anybody watched those fights, she was basically fighting lunch ladies. Like she's not like hurting girls stand-in with like one shot. She's basically just out cardio or out gassing a lot of them. And she doesn't even have a great gas tank herself. And so I think she has pretty much all the same flaws Malecki does. The difference is she's fought worse competition. She's 5'2" and Malecki is 5'9". Malecki has better cardio, and this is probably the rare instance where Malecki is also the better grappler, to be completely honest. And I don't rate Malecki's grappling really at all. But yeah, I guess in my head, for Nunes to be better than like 35-40%, she has to display a level of striking competency that I just haven't seen yet. I haven't seen anything to make me think she has the tools to consistently work inside range, or really, the one thing Malecki does reasonably well is win in the clinch, and I just don't see it with Nunes. Lags, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold time here. I mean, Nunes striking, it's not great. The output isn't great. The power's okay, but again, like you touched on, it's lunch ladies she's beating, so okay, whatever. And like she has decent leg kicks, sure. But the cardio to do it for 15 minutes against, UFC caliber competition, I don't really see it again. But it's low level women's MMA, minus 150, minus 160, not super interested. But I think it's Malecki or pass for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would not play it here. I guess my only thing I would say is don't betting Josiane Nunes is not value just because she's an underdog. C, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I played Malecki like pretty early when I just saw the height difference. Know that she throws volume, so I just figured that the line was going to move her way, and like I could figure it out later. I think I got
that's
like
probably enough, honestly.
Yeah, I think I got like minus 110, and then I taped it, and I was like, she should probably be like, I don't know, 60% or so. Taller, longer, fucking more volume. She's going to do like things in WMMA that are like successful. She's probably going to get hit like a bit, but, I don't know if Nunes can even match the volume over 3 rounds. Nor do I even know if she's going to be able to like really hit her in the face. So whatever. She's kind of a can. But, I think like minus 110 or, I don't know. Those early lines are probably fine. I don't think I'd play like minus 170 or whatever she's at now, but got in early, you're probably fine. And I think if you took like a late round, like round 3 stab on her, it might be worth it.
Luke, what do you think here?
Yeah. I mean, I get it. She's much bigger. She's just not a good fighter either, though. I know we can talk about Nunes beating nothing but soccer moms and her being tiny and she sucks and she probably isn't knocking out Malecki. I get that. But man, even in Malecki's wins, she is just not looking good. Like even in against a gassed out Macedo, well, once you drop the first round, she still got hit in the face 90 times in that fight against a gassed out smaller girl as well. Even that fight against Santana, she was pretty much losing every single minute of that fight up until she just got lucky and fell into the mount essentially, and then took the girls back and submitted her. Didn't look good on the Contender Series either, but so I mean, her as a slight favorite, I think it's probably makes sense, but I guess I don't really know why anybody would be feeling great about laying chalk on Bea Malecki in general. Just my opinion.
I didn't say I felt great about it, but I did.
Yeah, but you got about pick odds though. So
yeah, I mean, close enough, but is what it is. Moving on, Luke, I'm staying with you. We got Brian Kelleher taking on Domingo Pilarde.
I largely think it's a decent fight for Kelleher. Obviously, much more battle tested, fought elite level guys. Pilarde's kind of turned out to be like a massive fraud. I think he was like minus 400 in his debut or something like that. I think he busted a lot of people's parlays that week as well. But the thing, I guess, the credence to Pilarte here, in my opinion, obviously he's going to have a massive size advantage. And just historically, Kelleher's not really a great minute winner. He's actually been outlanded at distance in like 7 of 11 of his fights. And I think eats 2 more distance strikes in comparison to his opponents per minute as well. Guy kind of just blocks punches with his face. I still think Pilarte, has some pop there, but we've also seen Pilarde get out grappled too. Kelleher's got the nasty guillotine. I think Kelleher, slight favorite, 60% or so, makes sense. But I think anything beyond that, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really a big fan of Pilarde. Hasn't really panned out as many people are thinking, but I think the grappling dynamic is just kind of interesting too, because you also don't see Kelleher really going out there and out wrestling guys. I think he only lands 1 takedown per 15 minutes too. He's usually snatching up guys in that guillotine. So it's like if Pilarde doesn't wrestle at all, I don't know. I think the stand-up's also kind of interesting. Obviously, Kelleher's going to throw a ton, probably land a ton too. But, he's going to have to close a 7-8 inch gap to consistently get inside and not get tagged himself. So I don't know. Like I said, I think it's an okay spot for Kelleher, but I guess I'm not counting out Pilarte as some people have been.
Wags, how about you?
Yes, I think a good point that Luke brought up was just pretty much the minute winning capabilities of Kelleher. I mean, out of his 22 wins, 18 of them have been inside the distance. And even like myself against Ricky Simone, when that first fight was booked, I was tempted on a Kelleher inside the distance bet because it was like plus 400. And I was thinking, you know what, if he's going to win this fight against Ricky, he's going to have to finish him. And you know what, I kind of think, not similarly here. Like, I think he could still win the decision here. But like laying minus 190 here on Kelleher, it's just not a great look. I think that, there's a lot better spots on the card, but I think Kelleher has him covered.
I just want to say one other thing too. Just one last point. I think Kelleher's always the guy you want to target at like plus 170, plus 180. If you have done that consistently over his career, you've made a ton of money doing so because he's cashed, I think, in the large majority of his dog spots. But I don't know at this price tag. I don't know.
See, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I was gonna say a similar thing. Like Kelleher, like plus 200. Like, yeah, I'll just probably take a flyer on him pretty much always. But I'm like never really gonna lay any chalk on him. Like, I don't know. Pilarte's got some question marks. What has he been doing and this and that. But yeah, it's just kind of a pass for me. I guess Kelleher win is probably like more so ITD. But yeah, no strong opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, and like Luke, you just mentioned it, but like it's kind of funny you said that like if you just played him at those big dog spots, you'd be up a lot because that's not true. I mean, it's accurate, but like watching it, going through the tape on him, like I felt like in a lot of those dog spots, he probably was not hindsight value. Like against Renan Barão when he gassed out, sure. Obviously, he beat Damian Stasiak, who didn't really belong in the UFC, but pretty much the rest of his UFC fights, other than Osborne, where I guess the level difference was just too vast, he I mean, you said it. He doesn't really win minutes ever, like against anybody. Like he's pretty much always losing until he's not. Even I bet him against Hunter Azure, and like after that fight ended, I felt like I got remarkably lucky to win that bet. And I think Azure is a decent prospect, but I don't think he's any kind of elite striker. And he was looking like a world champ fighting Kelleher. And so I'm looking at this fight, and going into it, I was like, yeah, Boom at minus 175 seems pretty good. And then I watched, like, would it be really that shocking if the much taller guy who's much longer pieced him up on the outside a bit? No. And I don't think Pilarte really kind of fits the archetype for guys that he has been able to kind of sub, because most of his submissions, they're either guillotines or arm bars, right? Like he's not taking guys down, taking their backs and choking them out. And so I don't think it's very likely he gets either of those against Pilarte here. And if that's the case, well, maybe he is just a level above and he takes care of business that way. Or, maybe he's just a bad striker, which I think is probably the case. And this is a close, dicey fight. With all that said, I haven't bet Pilarte because there's just such little relevant data on him. But I could not take the shot on Kelleher here. Frankly, if anything, I think there's probably some value on the dog, to be honest. But moving on, we have Luis Saldana taking on Austin Lingo. Luke, I think you have a bet here, right?
Yes, I actually played Lingo, I think, at plus 115. He's taken a bit more steam. And to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if we actually saw this line flip come closer to fight time. I could be wrong. Maybe Saldana actually just takes more steam. But I'm not a big Austin Lingo guy, but conversely, I'm not really a big Luis Saldana guy. So more so the bet is predicated on stylistic considerations where I think you can say that maybe Saldana is more technically proficient than an Austin Lingo is. He'll fight from the outside. He's long, but we also saw Jordan Griffin have a lot of success against him. I think he only defended 53% of strikes against Jordan Griffin, and Jordan Griffin really isn't a great striker by any means. Essentially, he just went forward and he threw strikes, and he hit him pretty much with consistency whenever he did that when the fight was standing. And that's one thing I think that Lingo is consistent to bring is forward boxing-based pressure. He's got a really nice left hook, good right hand to follow as well. And Saldana tries to just kind of do the whole lean back thing when guys come forward and on him. I think that could potentially be nightmares for Saldana here. The grappling, I think, is also interesting. I know people saw, Lingo get, out wrestled by Zalal, but I also don't think we've really seen Saldana be proactively wrestling. I think I've seen him shoot one takedown. If he's been able to get into top position, it's because other guys are getting picked apart on the outside against him and they shoot sloppy shots, and then he's just able to kind of reverse and then get into top position that way. Whereas I don't think we're even going to see Austin Lingo really be shooting takedowns here. So ultimately, I think Austin Lingo should be like 55% or so, just based on optics and the willingness to go forward. And I think he just does more in the fight. So I was willing to get involved. I think I have 2 or 1.8 or 2 units on him.
Lags, how about you? Lags? Okay. See, anything here?
I didn't look into this. Jordan Griffin did get robbed, though, so fuck that guy.
He did get robbed. Lags, anything here?
No super strong takes. I kind of just think that Lingo, the pace and pressure, the wrestling has a chance to at least make this fight close. But optically, it wouldn't surprise me if Saldana is able to keep him on the outside. But I kind of think this is sneaky fight of the night potential. Obviously, we have the Panthers about fight later in the night, but I like violence spot here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm kind of pretty annoyed at this fight, to be completely honest. I liked Lingo. It was at plus 130, and I really thought with pretty much everything I've read is Saldana, and I was pretty certain I was going to get plus 150. And then the line got smashed. Now it's at plus 110, and I'm debating whether or not I want to bet it because I do think it's a close fight. But with all of that said, I think the obvious comparison, and this is my guess as to where the Saldana love is coming from, is what Zalal did to him. The problem for me is I don't think Saldana is nearly as good as Zalal as a striker, which is saying a lot because Zalal is a borderline UFC striker. But even just I don't want to MMA math it, but you go watch like Zalal's fight with Griffin, and he basically picked Griffin apart when they were at range and kited the outside without any issue at all. Then you watch Saldana, and Griffin is literally just sprinting at him and touching him up. Like, you can say Saldana fights well on the outside, but I'm just not really sure there's a lot of evidence to support that. Beating guys regionally who aren't very good from the outside is one thing. Beating somebody in the UFC is a totally different thing, especially Jordan Griffin, who can't cut the cage at all. Him being able to close distance, well, that doesn't make me very confident he can close distance on Lingo. And like Luke, you mentioned he might be technically better. If it comes into pocket exchanges, I think Lingo's actually pretty good in the pocket. He's a good boxer. Like, if they're in there, if he can force the pocket, I think he's going to have a lot of success here. And then again, like, I think if you look at the topology, you might be like, oh, Saldana's a decent grappler. He's got a bunch of subs. But you actually look, like you said, he never proactively grapples. And I don't think he's a particularly good submission grappler. It's another case of subbing a bunch of guys who don't really know what they're doing. And, who did he fight last fight, Lingo? Oh, my God, what's his name? He got cut. I think he fought in Titan.
Kilburn.
Yeah, Kilburn attempted 18 takedowns. I would put Kilburn's wrestling pretty much there with Saldana's. I don't really think there's much chance that Saldana is going to out-wrestle Lingo, to be honest. I'd be pretty surprised at it. Even when Zalal took him down, Lingo was able to work up most of the time. And so, I slightly favor Lingo. I'm still thinking about betting him. I'm just a bit annoyed at the line, to be honest. I've been hoping it's going to bounce back. But, yeah, to me, he's the clear side here. Maybe Saldana makes him run circles around him and makes him look bad, but I just haven't really seen enough to kind of back that up, to be honest. But moving on, we have a banger of a fight. This might be the best fight on the card on paper. We got Alexandre Pantoja taking on Brandon Royval. See, what do you got here?
Is this not like the co-main event?
No.
Should be the co-main event.
It's the first fight of the main card.
Oh. Not that it matters. Okay, I was just curious. Yeah, I played the under early on. Yeah, I'm not I don't have super strong money line side. I guess I do think Pantoja is a rightful favorite, but at the same time his most clear path is grappling. He just doesn't do it, right? He really just doesn't wrestle much. What does he average? Less than one takedown. And I think Royval just my opinion on Royval is I think he's not good, but offensively, man, he comes whether it's grappling or striking, it's just be killed or just fucking kill, one way or the other. He's gonna put himself in shitty positions grappling wise. And even on the feet, he's just reckless. But I think on rewatch, I give him a little bit more credit, offensively, he does hurt people. Moreno, wasn't reacting the best to some of his shots. I don't know if it's because he's long and awkward or what. But yeah, I think the under is in play. I know Pantoja is extremely durable, but I don't know. At some point, you're gonna crack probably, but. Yeah, I just think Royval is a pretty big under machine.
Yeah, agreed. Lags, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with C here, with the under as well, but I'm not quite getting to the trigger because, again, I think Pantoja is super durable. Again, I get it. Royval's going to fight to finish, but I think if Royval ends up winning, I don't just see him finishing Pantoja. But I do like Pantoja here. I think he is the better striker. Obviously, he's the better grappler here. I do think that Royval could cause chaos, like C said, on the feet. But I think the Pantoja, earlier in the fight, I was talking, I forget which one it was, the Roberts fight with Bob Mundez. I think the singing power from Pantoja is going to limit the volume of Royval here. But the thing is, I don't really like the minus 180 on Pantoja. If you got on those early lines, minus 140-ish, I think maybe. But yeah, I don't really like it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I've been pretty critical of Royval in the past, and I think most of my criticisms that I've had about his technical game, in particular his defense, both grappling and striking, I still feel that way. It's just I have to give credit where it's due, and that kind of insane pressure, zombie volume style, a lot of guys can't deal with it. I bet Cara France against him. I laid the big chalk. And you saw he just wasn't comfortable and he just couldn't handle it on the outside. And then he got caught in a sub when he kind of panicked. And I really think the kind of guy that it takes to beat Royval is someone who's patient and can grapple. Like if he fought Askarov, I'd price Askarov like minus 300, minus 400 against him, to be honest, like pretty comfortably. With Pantoja, like in theory, like Lags, you touched on it, like he kind of is the archetype to do it. And I do think he hits harder. And if we got kind of classic Pantoja, he's going to bite the mouthpiece and go see who's more durable. I think he cuts Royval to ribbons, to be honest. Yeah. But I don't trust him to grapple. I really, really was disturbed by the Askarov fight, to be honest, because it seemed like he death gassed there 6 minutes into the fight. That hasn't happened before, and maybe it's a one-off, but it's just very worrisome because if it's not a one-off and he doesn't get Royval out of there inside 6 minutes, that kind of pace is going to break him. And so, yeah, Pantoja has all the skills to be minus 300 here. Whether he uses them or not, I don't really know. He's kind of on the – I don't have do not bet list, but he is on the do not trust list right now. You know, even his fight with Cap, I thought he fought kind of like – look, he did enough to win the fight, but it was also, you know, I don't know. I didn't think he looked particularly great in it, if I'm being honest.
So no bet anything there, to be honest.
Right, exactly. Like he basically won because by throwing body kicks. Like that's not going to cut it here. I think Pantoja has the tools to win this fight fairly easily. Whether he'll use them or not, I'm not really sure. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I think you guys have kind of all touched on all of the main points. The one thing I will say is my stock with Royval has kind of increased a bit. Kind of similar to some of you guys. I was never, the biggest Royval fan, but to your point, John, he does need to be given credit in just his willingness to do things, both offensively in terms of the striking and the grappling. Pantoja isn't like crazy high output, but I think it's to somewhat of C's point that, it's just how Royval fights is going to kind of just force those bigger exchanges. And with that, I actually just trust Pantoja's durability more so in a firefight. I've been pretty vocal about saying that Royval is going to get knocked out one of these days. That's what I officially predicted for the Kara France fight. Almost came to fruition. I don't know. I still have problems with his loose striking nature. When he throws those kicks, they can often be naked. A lot of what he throws and the punches are really wingy, just largely relies on the head movement. I know Pantoja hasn't exactly looked great recently, but I don't know. Like you said, I just trust him in that type of a firefight more, and Royval is willing to put himself on bottom too. So, it's not necessarily like it would be nice if I had a higher degree of confidence to say that Pantoja was going to shoot a bunch of takedowns for sure. But I just think there could also just be a ton of scenarios where he's just even like pulling guard or doing that, and Pantoja is able to get on top of him there and potentially rack up some top time. I don't think Royval subs him personally. I know he's crafty. I know he's aggressive, but Pantoja is a pretty solid and composed black belt. And when he's ever been put in any tricky spots, he's always looked fine defensively too. So with all that being said, do I have a bet on Pantoja here? Not really. Or I should say just no. To a lot of what you said too, John, it's like if it does get extended, I think there's just merit to Royval potentially doing more and having more optical considerations there. So I don't know. I think Pantoja like 60% is probably right, but it's an incredibly difficult fight to like assign a number to and feel like good about it is how I'll finish up.
Yeah, so I think the consensus here is we all agree Pantoja should kill him. We just question whether or not it will happen.
Yep.
Moving on, Luke, I'm sticking with you here. We got Vince Pichel taking on Austin Hubbard. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Pichel in this fight. Right off the top, it's under the assumption that Pichel is going to come out here and wrestle. In my opinion, there's no reason as to why he wouldn't. He lands over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, I think at like a 60% clip. He's shown, like I said, pretty much in the large majority of his fights, his willingness to wrestle. That's where Hubbard loses. Like, I don't know. To me, I don't think it's like that in depth of a breakdown that needs to be had for this fight. I think Pichel covers his price pretty easily if he wrestles, but if he doesn't, I think it's probably a pretty close fight. I would say that Hubbard's probably the more, technical striker, might have a few more tools, but what I think Pichel also does well is he just moves on the outside a ton. Like guys just haven't really been able to like get off on volume against him consistently, or at least even just land in big combos. Like there's been a time or two where that's been the case, but in general, like it's like people aren't just like pacing Pichel on the feet either. And I think Austin Hubbard's one of those guys who kind of just needs that like slower pace, mid-range type of fight where a guy's going to stand in front of him to succeed standing. And last point, Austin Hubbard has dropped the first round in all 6 of his UFC fights. He's a slow starter, self-admittedly. So give me Pichel at Pick'em, who has a clear path on the ground here and perceivably a pretty high chance of winning the first round. So I like Pichel at evens.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I like Pichel. I mean, Hubbard versus anybody who's pretty relentlessly gonna wrestle at even money just seems like a pretty EV bet. Yeah, that's more or less just kind of how I feel about it. I mean, Pichel's going to wrestle. I think he averages like 3.5 takedowns. Yeah, I mean, Hubbard's takedown defense is but yeah, I think Pichel should be like 60% or so. I didn't play anything, but just kind of seeing what's going on with that line.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, so quick shout out, John Kelly, friend of the pod. So he had a funny tweet out. I think it was earlier today or yesterday. Was Sean Shelby McMaynard with the handshake and the against Austin Hubbard against proven grapplers. And that's kind of what we have here again. Vince Pichel, like you guys touched on, he averages nearly four takedowns per 15 minutes. And so why is this line flipping? Vince is about to be a dog. I don't really see like Hubbard having any kind of success against a guy who's going to be able to grapple for 15 minutes. The only time we really have seen that was, the guy we'll touch on later, Mark Madsen, who can't grapple for 15 minutes. So I don't see why this is Pick'em, to be honest. I think Vince should be a much bigger line favorite, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to complete the quad here and just basically say that I haven't bet Pichel yet, but that's primarily because the Hubbard line's coming in. I don't really buy the narrative that Hubbard's improved his grappling, to be honest. Just my own personal opinion. Dakota Bush completely gassed out, took his back in round 3 of his last fight. I touched on this when he was going to fight Selecki, but Hubbard basically has just a horrible tendency of giving up the body lock and then giving his back immediately in the clinch. He does it in just about every fight whenever anybody tries to proactively wrestle him. That really hasn't changed. His first level takedown defense has maybe gotten better, but Pichel, if he goes for it, it's going to be relentless with it. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Pichel subbed him, to be completely honest. Like, he just that tendency to give his back. If Pichel really wants it, he might take it multiple times throughout this fight. Standing, look, I do favor Hubbard standing slightly, but I do think his volume is a bit more reliable. And kind of to Luke's point, I think he does have more tools, just bit cleaner boxing, plus, obviously the leg kick thing. But yeah, I mean, Pichel lands like over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes for his career. Like, he's going to attempt takedowns. Now, I hope he doesn't do what he did in the Miller fight and fuck around a distance for 5 minutes, but I don't think he will in this fight. Like, he knows where his bread is buttered. Like, I think the best case for Hubbard, in my opinion, being at this line is Pichel's 39, and that is true. But yeah, I mean, I don't really rate Hubbard's grappling. Like, you look at the guys who have taken him down, it's very easy to say they're elite grapplers, but look, Selecki's got elite jiu-jitsu. I'm not really sure he's an elite wrestler. Got his back instantly. Davi Ramos is a mediocre wrestler who has elite jiu-jitsu and pretty much got him down whenever he wanted. So to tell me that Hubbard is going to be able to have significant success defending Pichel's takedowns, it just doesn't pass the smell test. Look, I could be wrong. I'm not saying I'm not, but my own view is that Hubbard's still the same guy he was when he got into the UFC. And like Lag said, we'll get into a bit more Austin Hubbard talk a bit later in this card. That's going to be a fun one. Anyway, moving on. We got Trevin Jones taking on Saeed Kakramanov. See, you looked at this?
I have not.
Lags?
Pass. Go, John.
Yeah, so I haven't taped this for this fight, but I have taped Kakramanov before. I'll be honest, I'm a little miffed at I see right now on Best Fight Odds that Bet Online has Trevin Jones at minus 135. I saw they opened at minus 300, which when I saw that, I was like, okay, I mean, that's probably about right. I will say I do think Kakramanov is decent. He gave Umar Nurmagomedov a real honest fight, and that was impressive. But it was really more volume-based than anything else. Didn't do a whole lot to affect him, and I don't really think he's the best grappler. And So this is a short notice fight. He's taken on 3 days notice. And look, Trevin Jones, he may have some flaws. I have issues with his volume, but the guy's a much more proven fighter than Kakramanov is. He's got more fights. He's fought much better competition. He can grapple. He can strike too, even though he's low volume. Where the line is, if it holds there when other books open up, I kind of think it's a must play. Between the 3 days notice and this being a debut, this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I taped it pretty in depth. I heard the name Kakramanov before, but I don't think I'd ever researched him for a past fight. I think he does actually come from like a wrestling combat sambo background. So he has, shown a willingness to wrestle and shoot takedowns, but he has issues kind of just keeping guys flattened, like with their shoulders on the mat. Guys are usually able to kind of work up on him. He will kind of play that like blanket type game. I think he has a couple of subs, but I don't think he's like a great grappler by any means. And even in one of his fights, I think it was against, I believe it was the Pipe Vargas fight where he had a lot of wrestling success early, but he got really, really tired in that third round. The volume dropped and he ended up getting knocked out. We have seen him slow in a couple of other fights. I guess the best way to describe, like, his hands aren't really that bad either. To your point, like, had a reasonably competitive fight with Umar, but he actually only landed, I think, at like 20% in that fight. Like, he just swung and missed a lot. And that's kind of one thing I noticed with him is that, he's aggressive. He has power. If he hits guys clean, he can put people out, but I think he's pretty reliable to overextend on shots and not really set everything up always well, which I think speaks kind of nightmares against a guy like Trevin Jones, who, like you said, maybe not the highest output guy in the world, but is accurate and hits really, really hard. 3 days notice. He just kind of has all the writings on the wall that he's probably going to have a reasonably strong first round here. But I think he just death gasses bad if he doesn't get Jones out of there. He's just not really a proven like great minute winner. He has had his back taken, I think, in a couple fights and threatened with chokes. Even in one of the fights, I think his back was taken for nearly the entire second round, and he wasn't able to work out of that too. We have seen Jones take some backs and get some submissions before too. So I guess bringing it full circle, I think the guy's actually a decent prospect. He's only 25 years old, but I don't think the circumstances are particularly good for him. And I think Jones has a game that should give him troubles. I actually trust Jones to probably be the better minute winner in an extended fight too. So I think Jones should honestly probably be like 65, 66% in this fight.
Yeah, fair. I think it's a good breakdown. Moving on, we got the Vanilla Gorilla, Chase Sherman, taking on Parker Porter, and I'm on Sherman here. It's a little kind of outside the norm for me to be laying chalk on a favorite like Chase Sherman, especially at heavyweight. But I just look at this and, like, do I love the fact that I'm betting Chase Sherman or that I'm saying I think he's still valued at the current line? No, but I don't really see a whole lot that Parker Porter does to really trouble Sherman. Porter was plus 180 in his last fight against, what was the guy's name?
Parisian.
Horrible. Yeah, against Josh Parisian, who is like probably the worst heavyweight on the roster. And he won the fight and the line was probably off, but it was a competitive fight. You look at Sherman and like he's got a lot of notable losses in his career, but the vast majority of them are to very, very good fighters. When Sherman's taken steps down in competition in the past, he just hasn't had many issues at all. He's brutalized them mostly. Like, I don't think Sherman or Porter is much better than Ike Villanueva, maybe a little bit, but not by a strong degree. Like, he's a pretty reckless striker. It's just mostly looping overhands. He's very, very hittable. He's shown to be very, very fragile in the past as well. He also doesn't really have the best gas tank ever. And so for me to believe that Sherman covers this price or Porter covers this price, I have to think he can have wrestling success. And maybe he can late in the fight, but like I don't really think he's a great grappler. He got Parisian down late, but I don't really see the kind of wrestling that I would really worry me with Sherman here. To be completely honest, I honestly think Sherman would have to really dick this to give this fight away. The guy was evens with Andrei Arlovsky last fight, gave him a decent fight. I think he's going to be better pretty much wherever this goes. He's the better striker. He's got better volume. He hits harder. He's much more durable. He has better cardio. He's far more proven. I think he's 70 to 75% here. I don't think Porter offers a whole lot for him. So I'm on Sherman. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I guess I want to touch on one quick point, at least in regards to the Arlovsky fight. I was listening to an interview with Sherman this week. I guess he tore his ACL 5 minutes before walking out for that fight, and he proceeded to land more significant strikes on Andrei Arlovsky than anyone had since 2006. So I don't know, man. I thought it was interesting. You know, his leg did get chewed up a little bit, but it's like, dude, the guy was getting his leg kicked with a torn AC and put on a reasonably good performance against a solid vet. So I think that needs to be said off the top. I wouldn't say I'm as bullish on Sherman as you, John. I personally think he probably calf kicks him to death and finishes him in the first round, to be honest. I think that's the most likely outcome of the fight. But I still can't really get over the fact that Sherman kind of just blocks punches with his face. I do think he has gotten a bit better defensively in comparison to like his earlier run and getting just jabbed with impunity by Justin Ledet in his debut. I think we have seen a bit of an evolution from Sherman since that point. But nonetheless, he still eats a lot of strikes. It is heavyweight, has been knocked out before. Porter will go forward, throw strikes, is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, will wrestle. Haven't seen a ton of Sherman on bottom. So, yeah, I mean, I really wouldn't be shocked if Porter just like survived and he was able to get inside and make it a closer fight. But I do think Sherman is definitely the more skilled guy here. Actually is down at Sanford now. It seems like that's just like the cool thing to do now. Everyone is just like flocking to that gym. So I think that's an interesting consideration as well. So I think Chase Sherman should get the job done here, but no bet for me.
See, how about you?
No bet. Haven't looked at this.
Lags.
Yeah, so where the current line's at, like, I don't love it. Like, I get it. Like, to your point, John, like, I don't think Parker, like, provides a ton of resistance, but I don't know. I think it's a tough proposition just because, most of his fights are, like, first round knockouts, and he's, again, most of his wins are by knockout. 14 of his 15 wins are by knockout. So, like, you're laying minus 190 when I think you could just play the KO prop maybe plus 120. Not that I hate you back because I know you got in a much better line, but I think that like where the current line is, I think plus 120 for his KO prop. Again, Parker doesn't have the greatest gas, greatest durability, and that's why I kind of think again the over 1.5. I know a lot of people might be looking at that for this fight, but I think that's you're playing with fire with this fight.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't really like I mean, look, Porter gets hurt all the time. He got hurt all the time regionally. Dawkins took care of it pretty easy. Right.
And I mentioned in chat before, if the under hits here, it's probably like I would say 90% Sherman is finishing this fight.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. That's a good point. And yeah, I mean, I bet in minus 150. I'm just saying if you were looking to take a money line here, I don't think I still think I'd bet Sherman at minus 190 to be honest. But I do agree. I mean, the KO, it's probably a decent portion of his win percentage. But anyway, let's get to the fireworks. So I haven't given you guys many dogs tonight. But we come to it. We have Clay Guida, the Carpenter, taking on the Olympian Mark Madsen. And I got to be honest, when this line got announced, my instinct was, I think Guida opened a favorite, and I was like, that's about right. Minus 125, minus 150 Guida, there's nothing wrong with that. Immediately got bet down, and I proceeded to see Madsen take after Madsen take, and I don't fucking get it. I'll be honest, I do not fucking get it one bit at all here. First of all, I mean, just right off the top, Guida's biggest issue in almost every fight is that Guida is at a striking disadvantage. This is going to be the first time in ages that he has a pretty substantial striking advantage, in my opinion, in this fight. He has a power advantage in this fight. To me, you just look at it, and pretty much every aspect in MMA, aside from pure grappling, Clay Guida has an advantage in this fight. He's faced a better strength schedule. He's had 5 times the amount of professional fights that Mark Madsen has had, even though Mark Madsen is 36 years old. They're both old. There's not even a huge age advantage here for Mark Madsen. The best we have for Madsen here is that Madsen's a Greco wrestler who can take a lot of people down. But look at the 2 guys he's beaten in the UFC. We got Danilo Belluardo, who went 2-0 and is out of the UFC, and the aforementioned a couple fights ago, Austin Hubbard, who everybody takes down, who Madsen, even though he racked up a bunch of control in that fight, wasn't able to flatten out on the mat at all. Hubbard was able to kind of just give his back, create space, and work back up. Now, There is a huge difference in the scrambling ability between Austin Hubbard and Clay Guida. Guida is an excellent scrambler. Austin Hubbard does not scramble. That is the huge difference there. Almost no one has been able to control Guida for significant amounts of time. Like, some guys have out-controlled him over the course of a fight, but no one has really been able to wash him out for like 10 minutes in a fight, if I recall correctly here. I think the idea that Madsen is just going to be able to take him down, hold him locked up in a body lock for 3 rounds is fucking crazy to me. If he does, bravo to him. But I'm more worried about him being on steroids from Fight Ready than I am about him coming in here and outclassing Guida in an MMA fight. I just honestly, I look at the fight and I'm like, yeah, I expect Madsen to land takedowns. I don't think he's going to control him. I think Guida's the better striker. And even in the grappling, what happens if Madsen ends up on his back? I've heard rumors that Roscoff used to tap him repeatedly in the gym. What's going to happen if Guida puts him on his back and gets on top of him? Guida's going to attempt takedowns here. We've seen Guida on his back. We've seen Guida work up and scramble. We haven't seen Madsen do that. We know that wrestlers have a tendency to not be that great off their backs the first couple times they get put there. I mean, pretty much every signal I would look for to bet an underdog here points to Clay Guida. I think Guida is 60 to 65% in this fight. I think your best case for Madsen is he lands 7-8 takedowns in the early portion of this fight and manages to squeak 2 rounds out of it. But even early, like, I don't favor him really to win the first round. Like, I've seen people say live entry, but if he can't control Guida for long stretches, Guida's gonna land the more damaging shot standing, most likely. And he's probably gonna get takedowns of his own. So yeah, I mean, I'm betting Guida here and I'm betting him pretty big. I think this line is nuts. I know you have a play here as well. You want to take it away?
You're muted.
Yeah. Let him have it.
Yeah, I play Clay. Yeah, I think Guida should be a moderate favorite. Yeah, I mean, I guess he could jump into something really stupid fucking early or get hurt really early, but down the stretch, I mean, I prefer Clay. He could scramble, which Madsen really hasn't had to deal with. I don't know. I don't really see why anybody would lay chalk on Madsen. It's not like he's really going to be like some fighter who's improving. I mean, you kind of touched on it too, but he's 36. He is what he is. Clay has obviously had way better strength of schedule. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see people talk about the live entry thing. I kind of think the live entry here is a little bit overblown. To be honest, I just kind of think Clay wipes him out of the water from the get-go. Just something that Madsen's really never faced. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't lay chalk on Madsen in this spot. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And if you really wanted to be safe with Clay, maybe you could take Madsen round 1. I have no idea what it is. Haven't looked, but maybe. But yeah, I think Clay finishes him later on in the fight.
Lags, how about you?
So 2 interesting things. So I was actually looking. So Clay round 3 actually on DraftKings is plus 1,800, and him by sub is plus 1,000.
Yeah.
Both on DraftKings. But yeah, I mean, kind of similar to what I talked a little bit about with the Bartimaj fight. I don't know how you're laying chalk here with Madsen. Do you think he's gonna be able to just blanket Guida for 15 minutes? That's kind of the only way I think he would cover this price tag. I mean, sure, again, like C said, maybe he could get caught in an early submission, but really outside of that, I don't see how he covers his price tag, given the cardio concern. So again, I'm going to be on Clay. I've kind of just been holding on because it's kind of just been one-way traffic with Madsen, and it's holding to plus 145. I'd really be shocked again. I mean, plus 160 Guida would kind of be insane to me.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much hit on the main points for me too. I guess I'll echo it that I guess I don't really understand why people are laying the chalk on Madsen for pretty much the 3 main points. One, he's never faced anyone the caliber of wrestler that Clay Guida is, at least within MMA, whose metrics are elite. I can't recall the exact percentage of the amount of time that's been spent grappling for Guida fights, but he's actually in control position 82% of the time. I'm not saying that he's necessarily going to be in control position for 82% of this fight necessarily, but my point is that the dude has fought elite level wrestlers and grapplers before, and he's not getting tossed around by them either. So just from a general spot perspective, when, the general consensus how a guy's winning his fights is going to go in there and ragdoll someone. And he's fighting guys in the past who really haven't had much of an answer for that, where now he is. I don't think it's just as easy in black and white to say that that's exactly what's going to be the case, coupled with the cardio concerns. If Guida is also putting up more resistance, even then Hubbard, maybe Madsen even actually slows down later than round 3. I think the Madsen first round is probably the best one, but I don't necessarily think it's like a lock that Madsen wins the first round either. I think where there's just a lot of questions that are going to get answered in this fight, coupled with, to your point, John, what happens if he gets put on his back too. Massive question there, coupled with the striking. So I think, Guido is a solid play. I was thinking about just maybe playing Guida decision, but I'll probably actually just end up on his money line. I did take some shares on the over 2.5 though, because I still think a percentage for both guys finishing is reasonably low.
Yeah, I think the one concern for me really is Guida sticking his head in the guillotine. I mean, it's happened a couple times in his career, and it does seem like Madsen has a good squeeze. Like, I could definitely see him shooting a single leg and getting tapped like 90 seconds into this fight, but it's not a high outcome though. Like, it's not going to be high percentage, right? So
no,
yeah.
And that was real quick too. That's actually, I tweeted out earlier on the props for me this week. It was this fight ends in sub. FanDuel obviously hasn't released their props yet for some fucking reason. They're slow as usual this week again. But no, I think it's probably gonna be that plus 350, plus 400 range, and I don't mind a tiny poke at that either.
Yeah, I don't mind that, especially again the massive questions about Madsen's defensive grappling. He might be the worst. Well, we don't know. I was about to say he might be the worst defensive grappler Guida's faced in some time, but we really have no idea. He might be a good defensive grappler, or he might be horrible and Guida looks like a minus 300 grappling him, right? So we have no idea. But as Luke said, questions will be answered on Saturday. We move on, and I'm going to stick with Luke here. We have the main event.
130 versus Charles Oliveira, just saying.
What, 130, you said?
2 years ago, Clay Guida was plus 130 versus Oliveira.
Yeah.
And now he's plus 130 against Charles Madsen.
I can already tell that is going to be the tweet that John is going to put out when Clay Guida comes out there and beats him on Sunday. As we like to say on the podcast, book it.
These are spots I love when everybody else is against us. I live for this shit. But moving on, we have the main event that nobody really wanted. The one that I don't really. This was probably the fight that I was least interested in taping on this entire card. We got Jared Cannonier taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Luke, what do you think here?
Yeah, kind of to your point, I really could care less about this main event. Like, I really have no emotional interest into it. I don't have any real betting interest in it as well. I can see some merit to Gastelum from some perspective. I definitely don't think Cannonier deserves to be like a massive favorite here, but I think he should be. I think 65% is fair. He is the more efficient striker of the two. I think he just probably does more over the course of 15 minutes. I think he'll have some success with the kicks. But conversely, I actually don't think that he gets him out of there, which probably most people then assume I should probably like Gastelum more, just because Gastelum has went 25 minutes 3 times where Cannonier hasn't. But he seems to be in pretty good shape. His defensive wrestling has improved quite a bit since, kind of his heavyweight days as well. So yeah, I think the line's probably about accurate, and Cannonier just wins a decision, but I don't think a knockout is like out of the question.
Lags, how about you?
I think it's funny picking up from the Guida Madsen point you touched on at the end there. I don't know. We don't know what'll happen. That's kind of how I feel about this fight. I don't know what'll happen really, because I think there's really a lot of plausible outcomes. I think Jared, like Luke touched on, could have a ton of success with the leg kicking, and maybe he wins the decision. He's only 1-3 in fights that have gone to decision in his career. So, largely I would say that if you're playing Jared, I like Jared KO at plus 200, and then if you're targeting Kelvin, look those later props. Those 4-5 decision was plus 290, and his 5 decisions plus 410. Like, I kind of think this fight gets into those later rounds. But again, I think it could be a huge sweat if you're, looking to play the over, for instance, or somebody by decision.
Yeah, agreed. See, what do you think here?
Yeah, I played Keith Lee for 2. I'd rather get like valuable information. He's still underdog right now. Yeah, Keith Lee probably does Lugo in. This is on Friday night for those who have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm talking about other promotion, Bellator. Yeah, I'm just trying to plug my guy Keith. I have no fucking idea what this type of main event is. I just know that Bellator would never put out this as a main event. So, yeah. Go back. Yeah. There's another dog who's like plus 400 who I'm going to rip on Bellator. I will tweet everybody out that after I send that.
All right.
Last quick point, John. I think what's interesting point, kind of why everybody more so is like, really question like this fight is just because I think the guys like their recent wins, they're not like great outside of like I was touching earlier, like outside of Jared's win against Jack Hermanson, who again we've seen him be flaky before at times, when he's dealing with a lot of power. I mean, who's the best win for both of these guys recently?
David Branch isn't bad for Cannonier. He was decent. I mean,
but chinny.
Yeah. and gassed
like,
out badly.
Got fucking heel hooked. Like in 37 seconds. Fuck that guy.
Right.
Why would I want to bet on him?
Exactly. And then it's like you have the other side, you have Kelvin who gets heel hooked. And then like recent wins, again, the Heinisch win hasn't aged greatly. Bisping, that was 3 weeks right after GSP. And then the Jacare fight, I think there's a lot of merit that Jacare won that fight.
It's actually kind of remarkable now that you say that because I just pulled up Gastelum's Tapo page and it's the split decision with Souza, which unbelievably he won in Brazil, won a split with Jacare, which is like literally hard to believe. Michael Bisping 3 weeks after he got finished by GSP, and then you have to go back to Tim Kennedy in 2016 other than the Heinisch fight. It's true. I mean, this is pretty ugly.
I think it's bad on both sides, but I think if you got to edge somewhere, I think it's got to be Jared.
At least Jared got lost to like Jan and Reyes for his 2 losses before Whitaker, and like Rob Whitaker. Like, there's nothing really. There's no shame really in losing that. Which props to Luke for hitting that bet after I bet Jared there. That was awful.
I had fight ends in KO.
That's painful. that is painful.
Tough one.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Legs. Like, I usually feel like for every fight, even ones I don't bet, I at least have an idea in my head of how I think it'll play out, even if that view is completely wrong. But I struggle to really get a read on this fight really at all. Like, I agree the leg kicks could be big, and Gastelum's been tepid enough recently that it's possible Cannonier just kicks him in the legs for 25 minutes and just kind of wins that way. But it's also possible that it just ends up being like a low-volume staring contest with not a lot happening on either side. It's possible maybe Gastelum will, channel that one out-of-body experience he had against Izzy and bite the mouthpiece and come forward. I don't really know.
I never revisit that fight anymore because I just think it's such an anomaly performance from him that it's just like it's so tough.
It's true. We haven't seen it before or since, and it's like when you pointed out the Gastelum line legs a couple weeks ago, I think it was like plus 200 at the time.
Plus 195, yeah. Like I again like that. I don't mind that, but
yeah. I don't think it's horrible. I might have talked myself into playing it there, but I wouldn't have felt great about it. Like I don't.
No, me either. No, yeah.
I think if anybody has like big favorite upside, it's probably Jarek, because I don't think Kelvin can wrestle him, and I'm pretty sure I don't think Kelvin has at this point shown the ability to just kind of have wide margins winning this fight. Maybe if he hurts him or finishes him, but otherwise I think his margins are going to be pretty thin, whereas I could actually see Jared really fucking him up with leg kicks and maybe just doing a better job of keeping space because he's a much bigger opponent than Kelvin is. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really think there's value on the line. I think the plus 410 by decision you mentioned, Lags, I do think that's, if Whitaker couldn't get Jared out of there, I'm not really believing that Kelvin's going to get him out of there. I don't think that's bad. But yeah, I mean, I guess my pick's going to be Jared. I think he is a slightly better fighter at this point, but this is going to be fucking ugly.
See, I think what's interesting point, so we'll end on it. I see like the type of dogs you should be targeting are like the hindsight favorite guys. Like Guida has hindsight favorite, like you touched on 60-65% hindsight favorite. Whereas, Kelvin can make this close fight. Like this is a close fight. I couldn't really tell you like Kelvin's going to dominate in any aspect of the fight. Right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, a Kelvin win probably looks like either a low volume mess where he scrapes out a close decision, or maybe he hurts Jared in a couple rounds. Or
he's got fast hands.
But yeah,
he's got good power.
Yeah. Does he?
I think he could. I think he could. Well, because that's kind of the thing too. It's funny we talk about this too. Like Kelvin's wins, they're over like aged veteran guys. Jared's 37. Not exactly spring chicken.
That is
he has
true.
been knocked down in his last 3 losses.
That's also true. That is, but 2 of them were to Dominic Reyes and Jan, right?
I know.
Right.
I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But like you look at Kelvin's last 2 knockout wins were Bisping, again, 3 weeks after he was finished by GSP and took a bunch of damage. And before that, again, Tim Kennedy, who was ancient at that point. Like, I know Kelvin cultivated this reputation for being a huge hitter, but there's not really a whole lot of evidence to, I think, suggest like even the Izzy fight, he hurt him with a head kick. Like Izzy was kind of taking his shots square without much issue, to be honest. So I don't know. I think it's a mess.
Yeah.
If you guys are interested, and Luke, if you want to give away any plays or lags too for Bellator PFL, I also bet Keith Lee and I bet Mike Hamill for Bellator on Friday night. That's all I have there. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I think I only have. Well, I had 4 units on Pacheco for PFL at -300. Beat that line by a mile. Of course, that gets canceled. Fucking stupid every goddamn week. And then so far for Bellator, I think I just have Hamill at +170. And I actually I might bet Congo. I haven't decided yet. I might bet Congo.
I don't hate it.
Yep.
I do not hate it.
Just like you touched on, John. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Lags, do you have any plays?
I do not. Nope.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this week. We'll be back same time next week at 10, provided that card doesn't lose 10 more fights. I think they lost 4 this week already. But as usual, you got me, John. You can find me on Twitter, MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. Guys, drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck this weekend, and we'll see you next week. Peace.